Rev 14:16 And he that sat on the cloud thrust in his sickle on the earth, and the earth was reaped. He that sat on the cloud, from John's perspective, the way the one sat on the cloud was like the Son of Man, Yeshua. John recognized the way he sat reflected his earlier writing. John 4 verse 6 sat thus. Daniel also uses a similar phrase, like the Son of Man, and we know that this refers to Yeshua the Messiah. Thrust in his sickle on the earth, and the earth was reaped. He thrust in his sickle because the harvest of believers in Yeshua are ready to be redeemed from the earth. These are those who surrendered their lives to Yeshua during the first 3.5 years of the world's tribulation period. The sickle is sharp because it will be a quick harvest. Before the bowls of God's wrath are poured out, we find these believers who did not take his mark in heaven praising God. Side note, this harvest will probably be quicker than the harvest of believers 3.5 years earlier at the sixth seal, where believers were transformed in a twinkling of an eye and possibly spoke to others on the earth like the saints of old did when Yeshua was resurrected. Revelation 14:17 And another angel came out of the temple which is in heaven, he also having a sharp sickle.
Another angel came out of the temple which was in heaven. This is the next angel after the previous angel who came out of the temple. He also having a sharp sickle. The sickle is sharp for a quick harvest.
Revelation 14:18 And another angel came out from the altar, which had power over fire, and cried with a loud cry to him that had the sharp sickle, saying, Thrust in thy sharp sickle, and gather the clusters of the vine of the earth, for her grapes are fully ripe.
Another angel came out from the altar. The next angel came out from the altar in heaven while the previous angel came out from the temple in heaven. This is not from the altar of sacrifice but the altar of incense, where the incense was offered with the prayers of the saints. Had power over fire. Have authority over fire, which means fire obeys him. Side note, similar references to the term authority over are authority over demons, authority over nations, authority over 1/4 of the earth, authority over waters. Cried with a loud cry to him that had the sharp sickle, saying. The timing here is important. The angel came from the altar signifying the time has now come and therefore cried out to the angel with the sickle. The sickle is sharp for a quick harvest. Trust in thy sickle and gather the cluster of the vine of the earth, for her grapes are fully ripe. Unlike the earlier harvest that was for believers in Yeshua, this is the harvest of evildoers, for they have reached the extent of their evilness. They have not heeded to the warnings, they are worshipping the beast and his image, taking his mark, unrepentant and refusing to give God glory. The Greek word gather is gathering dry fruit. The bowls of God's wrath act as a gathering mechanism. The first 5 bowls of God's wrath makes them angry. The 6th bowl empowers them to gather at Armageddon against Yeshua the Messiah. At the 7th bowl they are thrown into the great winepress. Then Yeshua will press down on the great winepress to destroy those who remain.
Revelation 14:19 And the angel thrust in his sickle into the earth, and gathered the vine of the earth, and cast it into the great winepress of the wrath of God.
Angel thrust in his sickle into the earth, and gathered the vine of the earth. The angel thrust in his sickle and then the bowls of God's wrath started. At the 6th bowl of God's wrath, the beast, the false prophet, kings of the earth, their armies and others will start gathering themselves at Armageddon to make war with Yeshua. They will be fully gathered just before the 7th bowl of God's wrath is poured out. Cast it into the great winepress of the wrath of God. They had already gathered themselves at Armageddon just before 7th bowl of God's wrath is poured out. The 7th bowl of God's wrath is casting them into the great winepress and they continue to blaspheme. Then Yeshua comes to trample them. The winepress is the earth from Jerusalem to the valley of Megiddo to the valley of Jehoshaphat.
Revelation 14:20 And the winepress was trodden without the city, and blood came out of the winepress, even unto their horse bridles, by the space of 1,600 furlongs.
Winepress was trodden without the city. The winepress is the earth from Jerusalem to the valley of Megiddo to the valley of Jehoshaphat. The city is Jerusalem, but it definitely doesn't look anything like the foundation of peace, as it would have been recently ravished by those who were gathering against the Lord. It had also been previously judged by God. God is now making a distinction between that city and others by not trampling on it. This is similar to God not bringing the plagues of Egypt on Goshen where the Israelites were. Yeshua is the one who presses the winepress of God's wrath but does it outside of Jerusalem. Those who fought against Jerusalem will be consumed by heat, that their flesh, tongue and eyes dissolve while they are on their feet. Blood came out of the winepress. The life was physically removed as the life is in the blood. Yeshua will do the final trample of these wicked people. Side note, here are some similar scripture references to God trampling on people in his wrath and their blood coming out. The end result will be blood extending 1,600 furlongs is 1,600 multiplied by 185 meters equals 296 kilometers. The height of the blood flows at a height of horses' bridles, 1.5 meters. Side note, practically, how many people would this be? An average person has about 5 liters of blood, 0.005 cubic meter. The closest large river to Armageddon would be the Jordan River. From the Sea of Galilee to the Dead Sea is about 110 kilometers, with the average width 20 to 30 meters. In addition, there are 2 main rivers close to Armageddon running from east to west into the Mediterranean Sea, each about 90 kilometers long. Therefore 290 kilometers, 110 plus 2 multiplied by 90. Assuming these are the rivers that will be filled with blood at 1.5 meters high, 296,000 meters long with an average width of 20 meters, then divided by 0.005 cubic meter, for the blood of each person, it would equal approximately 1.8 billion people. Let's assume for argument's sake, that the world tribulation starts in 20 years, 2043, then the population would be 10 billion people. If Christians make up 20% of the world's population but only 50% of these will go in the rapture, this will leave 9 billion people on earth. A further third of people will die at the 6th trumpet, thus 6 billion remain. People will also die because of the wormwood water, other plagues and other killing by the beast and false prophet, therefore let's assume 1 billion. This means there will be 5 billion people on earth at the time of Armageddon, and 1.8 billion people would account for a third of the world population gathered against Yeshua for destruction. Therefore, for whatever reason, there are 2/3 of the population who did not gather at Armageddon, who had the mark of the beast, who will make it into the millennium reign of Christ.